and bad jobs. And the example I love to give, between 1990 and 2000, in the United States, Las Vegas grew faster than any other metropolitan area in the country. 331 metropolitan areas in the US. And Las Vegas outshined them all over the entire decade. It was amazing. Vegas was at its peak, not right now. But Vegas was adding 12,000 people a month. It was losing 6,000 people every month as well, which is awesome. They had to open a new grade school every week. They had to open a new high school every year. This is growth. However, between 1990 and 2000, while nobody outpaced Las Vegas for pure growth, both job growth and population growth, if you look at income, if you actually look at per capita income, out of these 331 regions across the country, on per capita income growth, Las Vegas ranked out of 331, they ranked 323rd. So growth isn't necessarily what you want. It's not always enough just to grow. Right? It's understanding that, in fact, there's more to it than just growing, which is why we talked about prosperity. So it was important for us to say prosperity is more than just growth. Prosperity is also not just about increasing one person's income, right? It's about helping everybody. It's about, hopefully bringing everybody up. If I give $10 million more to Bill Gates, it does nothing to the economy of Seattle. If I take the same $10 million and evenly divide it among the 10,000 poorest residents of that city, I have changed Seattle for life. So understanding, right, that a dollar doesn't always equal a dollar, and how that, and where the money gets applied, and how that money gets applied is an important part of it. So we talk about technology, talent, tolerance, all happening in a place that has some territory assets, some amenities to it. It's really about growth, but it's also about growing prosperity. It's not just about growth. So, the creative, let's say, that's 3 books in 20 minutes. So that was pretty good. So, city size. So why do we care? If the creative class is so wonderful, what's the challenge? What's going on here? And why is it that rural areas feel so beleaguered whenever we talk about this? And this is probably the easiest way to explain it, which is a problem because when the easiest way to explain something is a scatter chart with a line on it, you're in trouble. But I tell you what the scatter chart is, and then tell you what the line is, then you'll get it. And then you'll say, oh yeah, we are in trouble, aren't we? So the axes on this, right? So the bottom here, my x-axis is just the share of the workforce that's in the creative class. That's good. My y-axis here is basically just total regional employment. Now, I've logged it because of size constraints and other kinds of other things that have to happen, but basically it's how big is the region. The line goes up and to the right. A fairly decent correlation of about 0.3, which basically says as cities get larger, their share of the workforce that is in the creative class, the share of the workforce, not the actual number, right? As cities get larger, obviously larger cities have more creative workers because they're bigger, but the actual share of the workforce that's in the creative class also increases. So as cities get bigger and bigger, they get more, not only do they get more creative workers for being bigger, but they get an even greater share of the total creative workers that are out there. It's great if you're out at this end of the scale. It's not so great when you're down at this end of the scale. So the challenge becomes when we're dealing with, and in fact for Ontario, if we look at Ontario, we see that roughly 3 in 4 of the creative class members of Ontario are in 1 of 5 cities, or they're metropolitan areas, so, but in 1 of 5 metropolitan areas across the province. So almost 75% of all creative class workers in Ontario are simply on 5 of the 5 largest cities. That leaves just over, 27% in this case, but just over a quarter of the total workforce for the province to be split up among the rest of the province. So you have this issue, right, where, gee, cities are great because cities, it seems like they're at least whether they're actually attracting or the creative class, for whatever reason the creative class is ending up in cities. I want to give it a causality thing here, but Right? They're ending up there. So, and what's happening with our cities? Well, this is the Greater Golden Horseshoe. And the darker the green, the greater the increase in density. This isn't just growth. Growth is huge, but it's actually increasing in density as well. So what you're actually seeing on this, and this is from between the last two census periods, what you're actually seeing is how much growth there is, not only in the kind of area surrounding the horseshoe, around the cities itself, but also the tremendous amount of growth that's been happening downtown. So the cities themselves are getting bigger. Which is, again, kind of fine if you're in the city, except if you're in Toronto today, when it was a $200-something million deficit. But other than that, right, but cities themselves are actually, right, they've got more of these creative, innovative people who are making the money. Turns out there's an even deeper problem with this, because cities are so important and cities are attracting creative class members, right? It's no longer the case that urban policy is social policy. Right? It used to always be, when people talked about urban policy, they were always talking about social issues. Right? Urban policy is now economic. The decisions that Metrolinx makes with regard to transit in the city of Toronto will shape its future for years to come. It will shape its economic future for years to come. It's not just about connecting the poor neighborhoods and the priority neighborhoods of Toronto to transit. It's about the economics of that city and how that city works. And so it's fabulous when you are in New York City. For instance, Bloomberg understands this perfectly. Right? Or if you look at London, you look at any of the major cities around the world, you see that they've understood and they've developed this understanding that in fact what's going on with their urban policy, that they're driving the economics of their region and their city by the choices that they're making. So it's not just about being social policy anymore, it's about economics. The challenge is what happens if you're not urban. What economic policy do you have if you're not urban, right? So great if urban policy is economic, but I'm not necessarily urban. So what do? We did the Ontario the Creative Age for the premiere. And part of what we did in looking at this is really understanding these questions and these issues and what's going on for Ontario. And the key thing with the report was it wasn't just about Toronto. It really is about the whole province and what has to happen for the province. And so there were kind of four key things that we said that were important for the province to really understand and take advantage of what's going on with these trends and the changes and what's happening and the importance of creativity and the growth and all the rest of it that's going on. And those things are still true, and those things hold true across the board. There's nothing about them that is urban-specific or Toronto or Ottawa-centric. It really is about every region and what can be done. So, as it just briefly, right, one, right, is to improve the creative, or harness more of the creative potential of everybody, right? Every single human being is creative, has the potential to be creative. We're not saying, we say there's a creative class, we're not saying they're the only creative ones, but they're the ones that are being paid for it. What we need is to get more people paid for their creativity. We need more creativity. In order to increase creativity across the board, it's improving the creative content of existing jobs as much as it is getting more creative workers. So it's not just about hiring more musicians and more engineers, it's about how do I get retail clerks to be more creative? How do I make that a creative job? So I'm actually paying people who are in service jobs to think, rather than simply to provide a service by rote. You know, McDonald's fired someone for putting an extra slice of cheese on a coworker's hamburger. Okay? That's not really rewarding creativity. But for those service jobs, then how do you do that? Then we need to broaden our talent base. We need to improve education across the board, not just universities, the colleges, the post-secondary. We need to be more talented, more educated as a province. We need to build on and leverage the geographic advantage. So the mega region, which I'll talk about in a little bit, but really focusing in on what's going on in terms of where Ontario is positioned, the location that it holds on a global scale, and to really turn that into greater advantage for the province than we have. And then the final thing was we need to kind of establish and strengthen safety nets. Things to help not only workers transition in jobs, but we also talked about early childhood education as an important element. Other things that need to be done to help. Not everybody is going to be able to make the transition, right, from auto worker to engineer